Hi, everyone. It is Jules from All Things Iceland. Hi, Ryan. Welcome. So, this is actually a bit of an experiment. I do over on Instagram for those who follow me there. And if you don't, feel free to do so. Every week over on Instagram, I actually do an Icelandic news roundup for that week. So, I'm basically taking like the largest stories in Iceland for the month of February and talking about them here. I will not talk about every single story that I did for each week in Iceland, just because, obviously not all of them are the biggest stories, but still, I think it's quite fascinating to hear what's happening in the country kind of overall. And just let me know if you can hear me. So just because I want to make sure I'm using like a new microphone and like a new setup and everything. So I'm excited about doing this and also to get people's thoughts. So the idea of doing it live is that it can be more of an interaction and not just me kind of speaking into the void, which is often how it is. Granted, I'm used to it by now, but I do very much. Great. I'm glad I sound great. Thank you, Yolanda. And yay, Ashley, go, follow me on Instagram. It is also, I do other things too there, like updates about the renovation happening in our apartment, which I'm going to be making a full video about that because it's been a lot. We have been renovating this place since October, but that's neither here nor there in terms of this video. Specifically, it's about the Icelandic news monthly roundup. And if I think I'll just get started, and as people come in, then they can kind of catch up on what we're doing. So thank you so much, Kaden, for the support. I really appreciate it. Hi from chilly Maryland. Okay, so what do you consider to be chilly? Because I think I'm way too used to cold weather at this point. So hi, Southern Rose. Hi to everybody coming in. So glad you all can join. And yeah, speaking to the void isn't bad. Yeah, exactly. I've spoken to the ether and congrats on. Oh, thank you. Yes, they're not done yet, but I am very excited about the fact that it's coming to an end in terms of renovations. So it's in the 50s. Okay, that is somewhat like Icelandic summer. So just as a FYI, we're talking about weather in Maryland. I'm not saying that's not cold for you. I'm just saying here it's really funny that the high of 65 in the summer is basically like a heat wave almost. But okay, we're going to get into the first story because I have a decent amount of them. But feel free, of course, as you're coming in to say hi or say where you're from. I always love to see where like people from different parts of the world or US or wherever you're from. So feel free to do that. But the first news story that I'm going to talk about has to do with Play Airlines. So I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but you might recall WoW Air, which is a budget airline, or went belly up, unfortunately. And employees from WoW Airline created Play Airline. And it's been like more than a year, maybe a year and a half, almost 2 years, in which they said they were going to start it up. And people were like, maybe this is not going to happen, right? But they actually started doing it. And all of a sudden, they're like, okay, announcing that they're going to be flying to and from New York. So this is an Icelandic budget airline. And yeah, I like this one. It's like US LMAO and Play Airlines, LOL, stop playing. Yeah, I'm not even playing. I also made jokes about the fact that the airline is called Play. I was like, we're all gonna get played, right? I'm only joking. They're a legitimate airline, so please don't take that as anything more serious. But okay, so the twist though is that since they'd be flying from New York, I got super excited and thought, oh my goodness, my family lives in New York City, in Brooklyn in particular. So I would like fly in and out of there. So like LaGuardia, JFK, even Newark. I'll take Newark. It's a little bit farther out, but that's okay. But the actual twist is that they're flying into an airport called Stewart Airport, which is basically like, I think near Poughkeepsie or something. And it's an hour's drive from what they're, claiming as like Times Square, which I want to hear from you, honestly, if you would take a flight that is an hour away from New York City, hour's drive away from New York City to save money. because this is their thing, is that it's 80% less in terms of fees than other airports at Stewart Airport. And I think because Play is the only international airport there. Yeah, exactly. Poughkeepsie. So hundreds of other people coming in. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I felt. I was like, what? First of all, I never even heard of Stewart Airport. No shade to Stewart Airport, but seriously, come on. Like it was one of those, like you felt like you're so excited and then all of a sudden you sucker punch from out of nowhere. It might work in their favor. I am not so sure if I'm willing to try it or not, but their whole thing is to be one of the cheapest, if not cheapest, options you can get in Europe. So I think they're really in this like roundabout way trying their best to keep the prices down, but is it worth it in terms of inconvenience, you know? So it's in Newburgh. Okay. But yeah, thanks for, yeah, exactly. I was like, I think it was like Poughkeepsie, but still it's far. So, and okay. So Claudia, you said I drove from Phoenix, LA to take a $300 round trip flight to Iceland. So they're out there. The customer base is out there. There's a former employee of Wow Air who is a part of this. And so like in part of Play, at least in the beginning it was. I remember the articles because I was doing the news regarding this. So maybe it's not all of them. I'm not saying like every employee from Wow Air, but there's definitely an employee who's there who was a part of the beginning of it. So yeah, I mean, that's true. I guess you could take the Megabus. It just seems pretty far. So that's just my initial impression. But you know, like I said, it's not. I guess I'm not maybe the ideal person. At the same time, if I see that other people are having like a really great experiences, maybe it is something that I would consider. Especially if the prices are that much cheaper than flying to JFK or to LaGuardia, where it's so convenient for my family to come pick me up or for me to take a, Uber, taxi, whatever. So, okay, that was the first story. So it's interesting to get people's reactions there. And so the second story has to do with a fatal small plane crash. And this is really horrible, really unfortunate. And they don't know yet, as of the moment, what happened to cause this. And in essence, this happened in the beginning of February. So a plane went out. I think it's a Cessna that was flying out. And the pilot of the plane, he went by Volcano Pilot on Instagram, took amazingly beautiful photos of like the volcano and, was conducting tours and stuff like that for different people. So an experienced person flying this plane. And the plane crash happened on February 3rd. And they found the plane, at least in terms of like what happened or where I shouldn't say what happened, where it crashed on February 5th. And it was in Þingvellir. And that is like, I believe Þingvellir is the largest lake in Iceland. So it's part of Þingvellir, which is this UNESCO World Heritage Site. And historically, it's probably the most historically significant place in Iceland in terms of that's where Parliament for Iceland started in 1930. So really beautiful place, really beautiful lake. And the lake sometimes gets frozen over. In this case, I don't know if that was the case or not, meaning like if it was frozen over or mostly kind of like that slick frozen over look. But due to weather, have been having really bad weather this February, unfortunately, and just winter in general, lots of storms. And so they weren't able to locate the bodies until February 6th. And because of more horrible weather, they actually weren't able to get the bodies out until the 11th of February. So this is really intense in terms of Iceland and possibilities of the weather not being so great and causing delays in something like this. And one of the individuals on board was a skateboarder, Josh Newman. So if you see me looking down, just because I'm looking at my notes about this, just so I can bring you like accurate information. And the plane wreck, though, itself, because according at least to one of the articles I read, this type of plane doesn't have a black box in it. So, but still they want to like recover the plane to see if they can figure out what happened. But they don't think that's going to be possible until April because of weather. And we're still, like, since then, still been having storm issues and things like that. So just really sad. And my heart goes out to all of the people who lost individuals. This is just horrible. So yeah, we're just going to move on to the next story in that regard. But it's something I wanted to make people aware of because it's a big story here in terms of everyone was shocked and saddened. And also, you know, things are sometimes happen and it's hard to know. You know, obviously we won't know until later about this, but it's just really unfortunate. Okay, so the third news story is about the weather again. So yes, likewise, it is terribly, terribly sad. Yeah. Oh, yay. I'm glad that people are coming on and being able to see the live. It is one of those things where, like I mentioned, if people like this, and please give this video a thumbs up if you are enjoying it, because I would like to do more lives, specifically around like maybe, you know, this monthly news update or other topics that people are interested in. So for sure, let me know just in terms of either with comments or a like, so that I can, you know, see how much you're enjoying it and continue to do it more often. So February weather was the coldest and windiest in 20 years, according to meteorologists. And that's not fun in terms of for us. And there were a lot of alerts going on here. And this one pass called Katla, it's where you would go. It's not the only way that you can get to this area, but many people from Reykjavik drive along this road in order to get to Hveragerði or to Selfoss. And due to weather, they've had to close this road many times. And it's like ridiculous actually how many times they've had to close it. And here it says over a dozen times in February, and that might even increase. No, actually, well, who knows what will happen for March? Hopefully not. I would think that it would get a little bit better. So, yeah, and between the 1st of January and the 15th of February, the Road and Coastal Administration said they carried out winter service and plowing on 640,000 kilometers of road in the whole country, whereas last year that figure was 374,000 kilometers. So it's just so much snow and maintenance in order to keep up with the weather this year. And oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you're. Yeah, I mean, I took a break in January, so that's one of the reasons why it's possible that you weren't seeing some of those updates. But I've definitely been back all of February, and it doesn't get that cold. I mean, cold is relative, I guess. Maybe because I'm used to it. I don't know. I'm probably not the best judge of this anymore, but it was definitely days where it was pretty cold. So yeah. And people who are coming in, if you're just joining, definitely let me know in the chat where you're joining from. It's -6. It's actually, we're in the positive numbers right now. I think it's, if I look at my watch, it says 2 degrees, plus 2 degrees Celsius. So, which I'm trying to think. I mean, it's above freezing. If someone knows in Fahrenheit exactly what that is, please let me know. All right. So in terms of the weather, I just going to go back to that because I find it really interesting, some of these like statistics regarding weather. And so far, the city of Reykjavik has spent as much as 350 million Icelandic kronur on clearing roads and paths, while the figure was no more than 150 million Icelandic kronur all last winter. So we're definitely in a place where a lot of like weather is not only, of course, costing inconvenience, but it's also costing a lot of money. And I'm mentioning this one in particular because so many people come during the winter in Iceland, which is great, but just be aware that it can really vary. So like last year, there wasn't as much, and this year there's a lot. Does that mean that the next year there won't be as much? Nobody knows. We'll just have to find out. And I am planning to do a weather in February video, or like not only just weather, but talking about the way that the weather can be like here on average, road conditions, and different aspects of like parts of the country that are available for you to go to. So Um, okay. And so this is one question that's not to do necessarily with the story, but I think it's really interesting. And I have not seen this in the news outlets that I was looking at, to be honest. And this is something that is really ridiculous and should be talked about more. And so I'd have to find out and see, but I've not been seeing it in the news stories that I've been reading necessarily, but doesn't mean that no outlet in Iceland has been talking about it. So in regards to, yeah, cold is relative. Yes. Anything under 50 degrees Fahrenheit is cold for me. Yeah, I can understand that. It is, if you're from a certain place or you just have certain average weather, it can be that way. I know it took me a while to get used to the weather here, even though New York City can get very cold in like January and February. But getting used to lower temperatures on average here was something that took me quite a while. And also thinking of summer as like a high of 65 degrees, that was not normal for me. I was definitely wearing a sweater my first summer, because I was pretty cold. So, all right. And yeah, and from the Met office, Birta Leaf said that the office issued roughly as many weather warnings in January and February as it did all of 2021. So we've had 2 red alerts, which is pretty rare to get it to be red, and then yellow alerts and orange. So yeah, it's a lot. And then the other really unfortunate part, because there's a lot of ice in Iceland, right? Like, it's funny because Iceland, just in terms of like ice all year long, has maybe around 10 to 11% of the country that's covered with glaciers. But if you look outside right now in my window, you can see that there's a lot of ice on the roads, and it's for the most part, it's being cleared up. So hi to people coming in. And Landsbytali National University, they recorded just over 500 injuries caused by slips and trips in ice and snow last year. But for this year alone, they've already had over 400. So yeah, not fun in that regard. And someone's asking, how do you deal with homelessness during such harsh weather? That is something that I want to understand a little bit more, because in Iceland, I feel like it's sort of hidden in terms of the homelessness population. I've seen some articles about it, but it isn't something that when you come here, you're going to be immediately faced with. Like in New York, you see people, or in LA or different like bigger cities, a lot of the times you see it immediately. Whereas in Iceland, I feel like it's more hidden, and I would like to get a better understanding of how that is also dealt with here. There are like places for people who don't have homes to go to, kind of like shelter type of housing, but still, it's there's an issue that I've heard about that I haven't really gotten a better understanding. And so that's just something for me to learn more about too. All right, for the next story is the rescue of 2 men on Iceland's largest glacier, Vatnajökull. And that one was, thankfully, they were unharmed. So it was 2 men, 2 Czech men, and they're experienced explorers. And I'm like saying this too because a lot of people think that some people who need to be rescued, like maybe they're not knowing what they're doing and stuff. But in reality, it can just be that there's horrible weather. And even as an experienced explorer, you know that it's not good and you need to get help. And so they had a beacon that they activated. And so it let rescue teams know that there are people who needed help, who were in danger on Vatnajökull, which most people are not going to go on there. I mean, like to traverse Iceland, but especially in winter, is something that's super intense. I do not recommend it if you do not have this type of like mountaineering experience, training and stuff like that. But these guys did. And they were able to keep themselves in their tent. They were pretty cold though, which not surprisingly, the temperature is getting really cold and the wind whipping at almost like hurricane speed, hurricane gusts. And so they ended up being rescued. They had 50 rescue team members from the search and rescue teams that came out to help them. So yeah, it can be kind of intense sometimes, but thankfully they were okay. So, oh, cool, Erin. You lived in Iceland in 2006 and exchange student at Háskóla Íslands. Oh, okay. Sorry to make you homesick, but hopefully it means you come back to visit sometime. And yeah, nice. Yeah, my pleasure. I mean, I think this is part of I think for me and for others, like when I was interested in learning about Iceland or trying to get a better understanding, it's the news, of course, and the other aspects of it that kind of give you some insights, not the full story, but at least you can get an idea, and then we can all kind of like chat about it. And people who might have experience with this can say something, or people who are just curious get an opportunity to share what they are thinking or could possibly be something to add to the conversation. So yeah, I'm glad that you're appreciating that, and it's my pleasure. So yeah, for those two individuals, everything worked out pretty good. So we're gonna go on to the next one. But just as a note, it's always good to check safetravel.is. And even there, you can log if you're going to take a trip or something. It's not absolutely necessary to do this, but still, it's almost like having someone who knows that you're going out into the countryside. So if something were to happen, you can then be able to, like they would be notified if they're like, oh, this person is only supposed to be out for 3 days, but they never, you know what I mean? Like they didn't come back or something, which honestly, that's not something that happens very often. So don't worry about it. So do I live in the capital? Yes, I do live in the capital area. So I live now on Seltjarnarnes, which is a peninsula. And it is basically like, if I drive 6-7 minutes, I'm basically in Grandi of Reykjavik, which is very close to like the downtown area. And 60% of the population, give or take, lives in the Reykjavik metro area. So like these different suburbs, and then of course like the downtown area. And there's about 370,000 people, I think now, maybe 375, if I have that correctly. So yeah, 60% of that. And okay, I'm going to give a bit of an update regarding COVID. So people might have seen the video that I put out recently regarding no restrictions. All those restrictions were lifted as of February 25th. And of course, there are different, things that come along with that. But just in terms of from earlier in the month, like in February, we're already smashing records regarding the number of cases or people who were testing positive, I should say, for COVID. And that in itself was just like worrying, right? But at the same time, the government kept telling us like, hey, we're going to be lifting restrictions, just FYI. And I know I personally was thinking back like, okay, I don't know, we're ready. But their reasoning behind it, like chief epidemiologist, along with the government, is basically saying a lot of people in the country have gotten COVID, and they're looking to get herd immunity in this way because a lot of people here have also been vaccinated. So that's an important part. It's not just, let COVID roam free. There has been a big campaign for vaccination, as well as the booster shots. So yeah, a decent amount of people have that here, and it's not as many people are getting hospitalized, even though there still are, for sure. And personally, I would just say I'm still wearing a mask and I'm taking precautions. There are people who are excited that there are no more restrictions at all. They're out partying, they're doing whatever. And of course, as the month has gone on, more people are getting COVID, and it feels like the circle of like, as it gets closer to you, like the more and more people have COVID, at least in terms of my experience now. And we had a record number actually the other day. I actually didn't check what it was yesterday, but 3,367 reported cases. That's important to say. So yeah, the restrictions are lifted everywhere. And at the border, they are lifted domestically. You don't have to wear a mask. You don't have to social distance. You don't have to take any tests. If you don't feel well, they suggest that you stay at home and, stay away from other people. But no one's looking after you to say that you must do this. Or it was at one point where like even the police, if people were coming in from out of like the country, they were calling people and stuff like that and going to check. So when do you think the US government removed the 24-hour testing requirements? Keep up the good work. Thank you. I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, that is up to them. And I think often in the US, it feels different. Like they don't give you the same warning. Whereas like in Iceland, they've been like, by the way, this is what we're thinking. And it's just like kind of like leads up to this thing. And it's like, yeah, we're definitely doing it on Friday, you know? So I think that's why, like from a standpoint of US or Iceland, from my, experience of looking at different news outlets, it often feels like there's a lot more of, we hold off and say something in the US, and there's so many more people, to be honest, and so much more political stuff. There's plenty of political stuff going on here, don't get me wrong, but I think that to some regard, informing people about this happening ahead of time was something that Iceland took pretty seriously, or at least was trying their best to warn people about the fact that this was going to be lifted, and that the purpose behind it was to start living with this and integrating it instead of trying to have all these restrictions that, according to them, were not being as effective as before. Like the different variants being much more contagious and stuff like that. So yeah, but yes, everything is lifted. And so when you come to the country, it used to be that you had to register on the Rakning C19 or COVID.is, and then you also would have to take a test at the airport. Like there's none of that any longer. And so my wife and I, this is from Bob, my wife and I watched Trapped and are currently watching Katla. Just curious what Icelanders think about these shows. We're hooked. Yeah, I think Trapped, both of them, Trapped really popular for sure. Ófær is the name of it in Icelandic. And then Katla, so there's a hilarious, this is randomly off topic, but I just want to say it because I think it's good. So there was a joke about it during Áramótaskaupið, which is like the yearly comedy show, or it's like the wrap up. It's kind of like a big SNL episode of the news and different like pop culture things that happen in Iceland at the end of the year. And the question that they kept saying as like the parody to it was like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Like there's kind of like people like that's all they were saying to each other. Because in Katla, and if people who haven't seen it, I will not give it away, but this question like, hvað er að gera? And it's like, what is it? What's going on, right? It's like, that's what they were asking the whole. And you don't really realize it until later because there's this big mystery, right? This like interesting storyline. And I enjoyed both of them as well, by the way. So I highly recommend checking them out if you haven't already. But yeah, it's super interesting. And there's like this other show that I don't have in this roundup, but it's called Verbúðin, which in English, I'm not exactly remembering, but it's about the 80s in Iceland. And that right now you can only get if you have access like to, if you can have an IP that says that you're in Iceland, basically, like a VPN or something. And what's fascinating to me, like hearing it, is that so many people are nostalgic about this time, and they're saying how well it captures that time in Iceland. So if you're looking for that insight, hopefully at some point it becomes more available to the public, like so people outside of Iceland, so people can watch it and get an understanding of Icelandic culture during the 80s, and maybe even see some parallels or like something that you can relate to in your own experience if you're around during the 80s. Okay, so the next story, and welcome to those who are joining. This is the monthly roundup for February 2022. Of course, as I'm going along, I like to chat. So as things come up, I'm, talking about them with people, but I'm mostly covering the news. That is the goal. So the next one is one that's pretty serious and shocking because Iceland does not have a lot of gun violence. There have been some increased shootings in specifically like the Reykjavik area, and 2 to be exact that happened recently. And this is something that like I mentioned, doesn't happen very often here. There's a lot of regulation around guns, gun ownership, and of course, gun use. And there's not much of a culture here of using guns for like revenge. But there has been an increase, according to authorities, of more guns, even one that's like 3D printed. And I was like, you gotta give me a break already. This is ridiculous. Like, people just find a way. And I think part about this of interest to me, meaning like how people are responding, is that the police, started saying that they were considering carrying weapons, which is not new in Iceland, that consideration. The police right now do not carry weapons, not even like pepper spray or anything like that, even though that's something that has come up and police were saying that they were afraid for their lives, even though in like these particular instances, like none of the police were being threatened directly or anything like that. But I think this, like I mentioned, has been coming up and it became a discussion. And so I put this out there mainly because to give some like background. So increased gun shootings in Iceland means that there have been like 2 in like a month or something. Whereas for some people, you might hear them be like, oh, that's nothing. Whereas for Iceland, like that's a huge deal. And so no one wants that to increase. And there was even a thought that the one that happened in Gravarholt, I believe, might have been like a revenge shooting. So nobody was killed in these particular instances. There was an instance, I can't remember the time frame exactly, in which someone was killed. And they think that was like a gang related thing. But yeah, and I actually have a video coming up about these kind of things that like what are kind of like rare in Iceland in comparison to other places in the world, and how that can, even as a person who's coming from a place where hearing about shootings wasn't that unusual, and then coming to a place where you kind of let your guard down regarding that because you're not expecting it, and then it becomes a shocking thing. So, okay, next story is about a boy that was rescued from a crevice in Þingvellir National Park. So I'd mentioned earlier the thing about Þingvellir and how it's this historically significant place in Iceland. It's really beautiful. It's also where you can see the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So the Eurasian and North American tectonic plates, this is where they're like basically meeting, but like tearing apart. And Iceland runs along this. Hi, Citizen Z. So Iceland, doesn't run along it. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge runs almost like through the middle of the country. And because Iceland has a lot of volcanic activity underneath, thankfully, as these 2 tectonic plates are ripping apart, they're in essence ripping apart the country, more volcanic activity comes up to fill it in. So by like 2 centimeters a year or something, Iceland could technically be ripped apart and become like 2 pieces. But like I mentioned, this lava and magma and stuff helps to keep Iceland intact, but also means Iceland is growing steadily over time. So, okay, great. You're from Iceland and I am from Reykjavik. Okay, awesome. Nice of you to join us. We're talking about this boy who I haven't gotten into that part yet, who was rescued. And so thankfully he was okay. But this is also something to just be aware of, is that because of a lot of the snow and ice that fell, it's possible that the kid didn't even see that there was a hole there and ended up falling, and they had to rescue him out, but he's okay. So, okay, Melissa says, enjoyed your collab with your friend in Reykjavik. Thank you. Have you or will you pursue a collab with Reykjavik Grapevine? I've done collabs with them. I've done a couple, so I love them. And the amazing thing about Reykjavik Grapevine is that when I first visited Iceland, I was so excited because I saw their printed paper in like some hot dog stand that not hot dog stand, but like a store he took me to that had where he was buying a hot dog. And I was just like, this is in English and it's about Iceland. And oh my gosh, this is so great because it gave me some insight into what was happening in Iceland and like the arts and culture and everything. So I've always been a huge fan of them. And in 2020, I think it was, for Christmas, we did the All Things Iceland box. So me and Gunnar, my husband, we curated a box for grapevine, and we sold that like during the Christmas season or something. So I've done collaborations with them. They've like done articles on me. Some of their staff writers I've done interviews with. So yes, we are connected. Probably could be more connected. I mean, they also do news. Valur and his dog. What is his dog's name? Polly. Adorable. Love it. So yeah, I'm very big fans of them, just as FYI. And we have collabed. I guess it's just not as obvious because you don't see them happening as frequently. But yeah, I'm sure there will be more collabs in the future as well. Yes, nature can be scary. I agree. I think this is another thing, and I actually have to take a drink of water real quick. Which I feel like I have my, this is Finnish. It's a Moomin cup, but in Iceland, Icelanders love Moomin cups. And when I used to work at this company, they were selling Moomin cups, whatever. And I have it like with my name, and I don't think you can see it. Yeah, you can. And so, yeah, I actually, that's how I've become in terms of in Iceland and like adapting to here is that I've taken on certain things like owning a Moomin cup, thinking of the country being ripped into two is like, volcanoes spewing. It's like, oh, that's nice. It just becomes like a totally different vibe that you take on, because otherwise you would be scared all of the time if that were the case. I've met Polly. Super cute. She was in the office this one time when I went to go meet with the salesperson when we were doing this box collaboration, and she just came up and like sniffed me, and I was petting her. Just really sweet. And I think they have this ability for you to go on a walk with her or something now. So, but yeah. And someone's asking did you go? Yes, I went to the volcano, it was erupting. I went 3 times because why not? You only live once, but you can go 3 times at least. I mean, there's somebody who I'm going to be interviewing who went 44 times. 44. So just, there are people out there, and to be fair, he's like a great photographer and was documenting the volcano and stuff. So this is one of those people that it makes a lot of sense. I don't know if I could have dedicated that amount of time to doing it. So, oh, thank you. I believe you got me started on Dade Freyr. Yeah, I do. I've been really working on like a playlist to share with people, because I'm not like a music enthusiast, but I do really enjoy music. And if I feel it, I feel like other people get it too, in terms of just that feeling you get where music in some way either makes you want to dance or it just does something to you that has a reaction. All right, moving on to the next story. So, of course, the most current of all things happening, and it's Iceland's reaction to the invasion of Ukraine. And someone had already asked me about like what was happening to Nigerian students. And I mentioned that at least in the news outlets that I saw, I was not seeing people talking about that or seeing like being written about. And so I just need to look around and see where else people were talking about it. But I know like just in news that I checked that is not Icelandic, it's coming out, or like social media in particular is where I'm TikTok, which I'm on TikTok now, which I love it. And Instagram and stuff where people are talking about this. So the reaction there is, of course, so Iceland is part of NATO, and I think that's really important to know. And even though there's no military in a sense of like the way the United States has, or other countries in NATO, like the UK and stuff. So Iceland does have a Coast Guard, and fascinating that I will talk about this later in another video about how the Icelandic Coast Guard won a war against Great Britain. Yeah, not the Cold War. Duh, no, obviously not the Cold War. The Cod Wars. It's so close in terms of just one letter off, Cod Wars. But I will talk about that because it was pretty fierce in terms of the tensions rising. But Iceland, of course, condemned the invasion, and then also, like other countries that were banded together in the EU, they took actions or involved in like sanctions and things like that. And then also closed Icelandic airspace to Russian air traffic, sent a freight of supplies to the Ukraine, and is accepting Ukrainian refugees. So there's been a lot happening here in regards to Ukraine. And someone's asking me, do you feel like a local? Because depending on the person, some people feel home after like a decade, others like 3 weeks. Yeah, I do feel home here. And like a local, yes, but and it's good that you said like a local because, for instance, some people might think that you become Icelandic, and not meaning like you actually become Icelandic, but like that you might want to say that. And I know most of the people who are foreign origin here, like that's not how they would identify because it's so specific, I think, to grow up in Iceland and to have that experience or to be of Icelandic descent or something. And so for me, being Jules from New York City is an identity that I very much cherish because it helped to shape me, to be the person I am. But knowing that I still feel at home here, meaning like when I'm away from Iceland, I do miss it and I enjoy coming back. And yes, there are parts of it that are not as fun all the time, especially when we're having back-to-back storms. But I absolutely love being here. And so this is not something that I hope ever changes, just because it's been amazing being able to live here and to kind of understand more of the culture as I go along. So yeah. Yes. Thank you, Ashley. You understand what I'm trying to say. And okay, so that was that news story regarding Ukraine. And of course, there's more things coming out as we get more information or things continue, which hopefully they don't, because this is just awful on so many levels. But the next story has to do with Katla volcano. And these stories, by the way, are not in chronological order of how they happened. So they just happened during the month. And I purposefully try to have them where like maybe there's one story that's not so fun to talk about, then there's another story that's kind of exciting, but maybe also, there's some people might find this kind of scary to hear about the volcano having an earthquake or this biggest earthquake, Katla, in 5 years. But for like people who are excited by the fact of, the earth moving or like what's going to happen, and not excited that you want anything to be destroyed, meaning like anyone's homes or anything like that, because in reality, Katla, which like that show, this area that is Vik I Mýrdal, which is in the south coast. This is an area that a lot of people end up stopping at, this Vik in particular. So this place, if Katla were to erupt, it has a glacier on top of it. That ice could melt and flood Vik, which would destroy homes and things of that nature. So it actually could be quite serious. And the reason why I am telling this story is because it's a little scary to think about when a volcano is so close to where people are living. Whereas the one that was on the Reykjanes Peninsula, yes, it did get farther in terms of the lava flow than what people had expected, but it didn't destroy any homes or anything like that. So yeah, it's just so different than what you might expect in terms of Iceland and geography, because Iceland is not that large of an island. At the same time, it's large enough. And the amount of people here, 375,000, like I mentioned, they mostly live around the coast. And in the middle of the country is the highlands, which is uninhabitable. Okay, on to the 10th news story, which has to do with Iceland's oldest ever person who ended up dying at 109. Can you believe that? That is amazing that she made it to that age. And even though she passed away, so condolences to her family. She lived for a long time. And so that's amazing. And she was saying that, and I'm trying to look for her name here because I had her information written down, but okay, I'm not immediately seeing it. But she said that she didn't smoke or drink, and she read a lot of books. I think her last name is Ólafsdóttir. So yeah, and I was just like, oh man, well, can't say I never did any of those things. But maybe with reading some more books and chilling out in life. And she was a phone operator for 40 years as well in Iceland. So she lived an interesting life, or at least one that hopefully it was free of drama. Maybe that helped a lot to get her to 109. But she ended up passing away. Yes, Dora. Her name was Dora Olafsdottir, and she was born July 6th, 1912. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bob. Yeah, I was like, my notes are, I'm scrolling, and it's like, I have them here somewhere. And she passed away on Friday morning, February 4th. So yeah. So we'll see in terms of like how, people are aging for sure and aging well and living longer and having higher quality of life at older ages. So this is happening in Iceland too. Okay. So this story has to do with a draft bill, and the Minister of Justice is kind of coming under fire for this. And in essence, it's problematic for a couple of reasons. I mean, they're talking about mandatory medical examinations for asylum seekers that they essentially want to deport. And doctors, so the Icelandic Association of Doctors has criticized this draft bill. So it's not something that's come into being a law, but it was put on the table in Alþingi, which is the Icelandic parliament. And like I mentioned, that the Association of Doctors is criticizing it for making it possible to force asylum seekers into medical examinations. Basically, what they're saying is if the bill becomes law, it would put doctors in the position of having to choose between following the law of the land or their internationally recognized moral code of conduct. And the Geneva Declaration of the World Medical Association says the doctor is bound to put the health of their patient above all else. And let's just say that a medical examination would clear a person who is a asylum seeker to be deported. And that was against like their best interest for safety and things like that. That's where this comes into play in terms of moral conduct. And then also the rights you have as a patient if you were to have a doctor to examine you. So yeah, this is something that's come up and is causing quite a roar in the human rights realm. So human rights groups are also criticizing this, and then actually like associations of doctors in Iceland. Next story, which we're getting down to the last story. Wow, this went much quicker than I thought. So if people have reactions or questions or anything, feel free to put them up. So North Iceland now has its own international airline, and I want to see who can guess. What do you think? If you've not heard about this story, what do you think the name of this airline should be? I'm just curious. Hi. Yes, I am still in Iceland. I live here. I've been living here for almost 6 years. In June will be my 6th year anniversary, which I'm pretty excited about. I'm not sure how to celebrate yet, but all right. So far, I don't see any guesses at what this airline should be, but it's called Nice Air. and to be fair though, it's based in Akureyri, and it's kind of a reference to North Iceland. Nice Air, North Iceland. But I think it's a really cute name, and their service will be offered to the UK, Denmark, and Spain, flying into the north of the country, which for many people, the majority of people who fly internationally into Iceland go into Keflavik Airport. I have flown from Reykjavik Airport, so downtown, like not downtown, but like basically in the downtown area or close to it, to Greenland, for instance. So I know that you can fly internationally, technically, from other places than Keflavik, but the majority of people who come to visit Iceland, they are flying into Keflavik, which is in the south. And a lot of people also, because the driving can be 5 hours or whatever else, they're not really exploring the north of the country. Yeah, I think it's a cute name too. I'm glad I'm not the only one. And so it's something where now it makes the north more accessible to people. I mean, hopefully at some point they're flying to the United States, but I totally get them starting out with European countries first. And yeah, I think it will be round trip. I believe so. I hope so. I mean, they're going to start selling tickets they said a few weeks or so. When I was a couple of weeks ago that I talked about this story. So yeah, Ashley says, I criticize that as well. It reminds me of having to get blood tests in order to vote or get married. That was scary to see. Human rights violations indeed. Yeah, this is just talking about the other story regarding this draft bill for asylum seekers in Iceland. to get mandatory medical examinations. So yeah, this area of Iceland, so many areas of Iceland are gorgeous, and people just aren't aware because maybe they don't have the time. Like, not everybody can take 3 weeks, a month out of their life or something to travel around the country. Not to say that you need a month, but I've done it in 2 weeks and felt like I was rushing around because I love to see everything. And I'm taking some trips this summer as well, or like early summer, late spring. So make sure you're following me on like Instagram for sure, because I'm going to be like putting it in my stories and things like that, or even over on TikTok where I'm making some fun short videos. But yeah, it's the case where a lot of people end up coming here for 3 days, 5 days, and they only go to one section of the country because that's what they have time for. So if you could fly directly into the north and go around the Diamond Circle, for instance, then so there's the Golden Circle in the south and this Diamond Circle that was named the Diamond Circle to kind of just get people's attention in the north, and it's gorgeous. So the West Fjords, north, south, the east, the Highlands, literally everywhere of Iceland has something fascinating and really beautiful and worth seeing. And I'm always trying my best to showcase that. And I'm going to do that more on this channel for sure, so people can get a good idea of what's available. So those are all of the Icelandic news stories that, oh, okay, I've got a question here. Do I know of any streamers from Iceland? Like other live streamers? People who are gamers or people who are YouTube individuals? I'm just not sure what do you mean by streamers. I'm pretty new to streaming, to be fair. So which public bar is your favorite? My favorite is Kaldi bar, and I will write that in the comments. So it's funny that there is George, who is one of the owners. I think he's like the main owner or something of Kaldi bar, and I did an interview with him. It's not a sponsored video. It's not a video. It's not a sponsored podcast episode, so it'll only be on audio, and you can get it wherever you listen to podcasts. And I'll have that out soon. But he's Afro-Brazilian, and he came to Iceland when he was 16 years old. Super fascinating story. And, end up later on opening up Kaldi bar. But yeah, the way that they have constructed Kaldi bar, meaning it's super chill, amazing customer service, the drinks, everything. The atmosphere for me is really fun. I don't necessarily care to be there when there's like too many people, but I do enjoy it a lot. So that's my favorite. And there are some other places too, of course, but that's what immediately comes to mind. And yeah, if you've enjoyed this video, definitely make sure to give it a thumbs up. I greatly appreciate that. And this helps me in order to know if people are wanting more videos like this or more live streams and things of that nature. So if no one else has any other questions, my pleasure. I am going to sign off and say thank you just to everybody for joining me. It's been a blast. And if you aren't already, please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on other videos coming out, other live streams. And of course, you can follow me over on Instagram if you want more frequent updates regarding Iceland. Yeah, it's my absolute pleasure. All right, everybody, have a wonderful rest of the day, evening, morning, whatever it is for you, wherever you are. And I thank you. I'm glad you loved it, Ashley. And to everybody else, Paul, Ryan, thank you. Happy Mac. It was really fun. I think this could be something for the future. And also, if you're interested in terms of like getting advance notice, because sometimes YouTube is not always showing when, notifications of what I'm doing. I can, if you want, I can put the link for my newsletter, and I'll start announcing in my newsletter when I plan to do live streams so that people can join there, and then just come on and we'll have like a fun chat about Iceland. So the Art Media is asking me if I missed the United States. No, not really. I missed some things in the US that make life more convenient or that are not as expensive, but not necessarily living there. All right, now I'm definitely signing off. Thanks again. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.